150 pounds. Mom was solid her life. And they were quite the couple. We were sitting there, and I was in the middle between my lovely parents and the principal. This is an old story, I understand that, but it's relevant. Looked at me, pointed and said, Mr. and Mrs. Law, he can't come here. And it was the weirdest moment because my mom, who always spoke, was just strangely silent. My dad, who rarely spoke because my mom always spoke, just sat there kind of looking, dumbfounded at this reaction. My dad then said, we live across the street. Well, Mr. Law, we know where you live. We know who you are. The fact of the matter is he can't come to this school. Well, where's he supposed to go? Across town to the school where kids like him go? Mom went, kids like who? Principal using a really old word. We got to get rid of this word. Said crippled kids. Like him, and pointed a second time. I love this. Mom looked at me, looked at the principal, finally spoke and said, he's not crippled. Principal looked at my mom like there was something wrong with her too. Mrs. Law, he's got no arms. What do you call that? Mom went, Alvin. It was fascinating though. In that room that day, the principal actually looked at us and said this exact sentence, be that as it may, there's nothing we can do. You know what I love about Rotary? And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I do not believe that expression exists inside the organization. There's always, always something you can do, correct? It is a mindset. You know this. You do not need me to remind you of this. But perhaps at this in particular awkward time of year, we need to appreciate even more so than we ever do the rest of the year how truly fortunate we are. I know you know this. But I've got one last story, and then I will let you go, because I know you've got timelines, and of course, once I get started, it's hard for me to stop. My mom and dad got me into that school simply out of will. I mean, you should have been in that room. It was a very awkward moment. My mom started to cry, not big tears, just little ones, you know. She was upset. My dad saw my mom cry. My dad loved my mom. When Mom, by the way, passed away in '96, my parents had been married for 66 years. So you can well imagine what they were like, okay? And it's okay, you don't need to clap. But I think what's interesting is you should have been there when my dad looked at the guy that made my mom cry. Remember, you didn't mess with my dad. So he said to my mom, Hilda, I think you need a moment to collect yourself, dear. Maybe you should go to the library, you know. There was an open house, so get another coffee, you know. Maybe take the boy, get him another donut. The principal and I are going to have a little chat now. Now, I don't know what went on in there. All I know is 20 minutes later, Dad came out, big smile. Hey, kid, you're going to school here tomorrow. And I was pretty sure my dad beat up the principal. No, my dad wanted to beat up. Do you ever get so incensed with the world we live in that it upsets you, makes you angry? Yes, me too. There is a great way to deal with aggression and anger in a world that seems to be bent on tearing itself apart. And that is pulling yourself together with a group like this. There is so much in this room. I wish I could stay with you and talk to you for 3 hours because I love what your organization, but more importantly, what each and every one of you represents. You are the optimism that we all have to have in our world, and whether you believe it or not, your currency, your energy, your way of living your lives, I believe, ripples out in ways that you can't even understand. Let me give you one final example, and then I promise I will shut up. I promise. This is my personal favorite story. Can I get you to put that up on the table there, big guy? In 1971, my mother got a phone call out of the blue one day because I was going to school. This is all kind of put together, of course, in a much more ornate way when I've got the whole show. Imagine this real-time phone call. Mrs. Law, my name is Blaine McClary. Sorry to bother you on a school day. I am the band director for the Yorkton City School Band Program. Do you have a son named Alvin? Yes, we do. Does Alvin have a talent for music that you're aware of? He loves music. We don't know if he's talented or not. Sorry, why are you calling? Mrs. Law, all 11-year-olds in Yorkton have to take a music aptitude test, and your son got 96%. Wow, that's a good mark. It is, Mrs. Law. That's why I'm calling. We need him in the school band. Please remember, picture this phone call in real time. So my mother is thinking, fascinating. Sir, can I ask you a couple of questions? Absolutely. Did you have an instrument in mind for my son? You know what, Mrs. Law, we normally don't do this, but I'll tell you what, special offer. Why don't you bring him to the high school sometime next week? He can pick any instrument he wants. That's very generous of you, Mr. McClary. I can't wait to tell my son the good news. I just got one more little question. Have you met him? No, I just got his phone number here. I'm kind of going through a list. Well, sir, I should probably tell you right now. Good time to tell you. Alvin sort of has no arms. That's exactly what she said. And then the line was quiet. I mean, really, can you imagine? All of a sudden, Mr. McClary says, I didn't know that. I must have made a mistake. God, I feel horrible right now, Mrs. Law. I hope I didn't embarrass you. I know I embarrassed myself. All I can say is, sorry to bother you. Have a nice day. Click. Hung up the phone. Now, would you not agree, and I'm not indicting anybody on this one, but would you not agree that most of society could care less? They didn't want to, what would they call back? Would they figure out a way? You know what's interesting in my life? Whenever I take a look at it, and I'm not convinced that there's a real simple answer to this question, why have I had these opportunities presented to me? It's not sympathy. It can't be that, because I don't think that's how it works. All I know is moving into a home with Jack and Hilda Law was obviously a very significant event in my life path, but more significant in my life path was Blaine McClary phoned back. 6 weeks later, I walked in the house. I had never heard of the first phone call. Mom had a great smile. She had really ugly teeth, but she had a great smile. And she was smiling so big that day, I knew something was up. It was like this exact words. Honey, we got to get in the car. We're going to the high school. You're not going to believe this. Got in the car. She informed me of the first phone call. She told me how he hung up. She told me she didn't tell me because she didn't want to hurt my feelings. And then she told me how he called back that day. I was going to be in the band. Now, I got to be honest. I was picturing like a McCartney event, you know? Lights and sound and audiences. That wasn't exactly what was coming next, yes? So I met Mr. McClary. He seemed like a regular guy, but he turned out to be an awesome guy. 2 more teachers at the Yorkton High School. The woodworking teacher's name was Mr. Wood. I just love telling people that. We went to the back of the school to the dreaded vocational wing where they taught the trades. In the middle of this room, a smaller room off a big room where they taught construction, was a funny-looking chair, okay? It was not like this when it was wooden. The right arm had been sawed off, but the left arm was still there. It had a metal rod bolted to the side with a big clamp welded to the top, and there was another one on the back. On the floor was a long black case. Mr. McClary sat me in the chair, opened up the case, took out, put together, and inserted in these clamps, I love this, a trombone. A trombone, for God's sake. And like a game show host, he went, what do you think? Well, what do you think I thought? I was 11. It was the dumbest looking thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. So he simply asked, can you move the slide with your foot? Yeah, I can do that. Wow, I can actually do that. Can you make this noise? Okay. Can you do it in the mouthpiece and move the slide? This noise came out. That sounded pretty good to me. 11-year-olds love noise, right? So I played for about 10 seconds. I locked the slide. I sat there in what can only be described as total confusion, okay? I had no idea what to feel, but I wish you could have been in that room. Again, a longer day would allow me to talk about energy. My wife teaches energy. She's a feng shui consultant, very smart at what she does. She believes that everything has energy, including people, okay? Did you ever get around someone, you're with them 30 seconds, it was like 25 seconds too long? All they do is complain. I know there's things to complain about, but what about instead of complaining, doing something about the complaint? Yes? Just a thought. Anyway, I got to tell you, that room was energy. Really, you just had to be in that room. Mr. McClary smiled and said, this is what you're going to play in the band, young man. Oh, God, it was a moment. I mean, you should have been there. Mom was crying in the car. Different tears this time. These 2 teachers are practically dancing together. And all the way home, all I could think about is, how am I going to march? Most of the time, when our life goes through a transition or change, many times, I believe, we're not aware of it. A moment in time can signify a change in our entire life path. But most of the time, we're not aware of it. A lot of people think that it's the big decisions that change our life. I don't agree. I think it's the little ones. It's the little insignificant moments that change the direction of our lives. Now, I can't show you the trombone, but I asked somebody to bring in a drum simply because I want to show you what happened because certain things in my life changed direction. I don't know exactly what this is going to sound like to you guys, but I do want to show you because I do also play the drums. So let me just show you this real quick. It's going to be kind of loud, so here we go. That's pretty compelling, yes? Why did I do that? Showing off? I want to impress you. Of course I do. We all want to impress the world that we live in. Yes? It is a little bit weird because we're supposed to also be humble. You can be humble and make an impression. You don't even need Rotary to do that. But the fact is you have this group. You have this organization. But more than anything, you have what I believe is a gigantically significant thing in our world. You provide that gap that is so evident to me every single day. The gap of not only need and charity, but the gap of caring energy. It truly is amazing what people can do when they turn the tide around to a caring, giving, and not just charitable idea and attitude, but more than anything, it is not about us. It is about the world. It is about the significant difference that you can make. And I hope during this holiday season, you understand that you do make a difference. And without you, I don't know what our world would look like. So thanks for having me here today. Thanks for your generosity of spirit. And if I can say this without being too unpolitically correct, Merry Christmas. And thanks for having me here.